Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is an absolutely gorgeous day. Low 70s, low humidity, fall is here. I'm excited. Now, I've got a couple things going on right now. One thing, if you look behind, I've got my trailer. I'm starting to get it packed up, getting things in place for my out west trip. Last year I did 2 weeks out west. This year I'm doing 3 weeks out west, just a road trip hitting Texas, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and heading up to North Idaho to meet my buddy Colton, who I did my trek training with. It's going to be an epic trip. I will likely vlog a good portion of it, so stay tuned to that. Now, what are we working on today? I've got the original Parajet Maverick with the Moster 185 dual start. This is the second motor on this particular unit. If you don't know, if you haven't seen my videos, this is the original unit I trained on and have been flying for the last coming up on 3 years. So I've got about 100 hours on this second motor. Still running good. It's at that point where I know there's more maintenance that needs to be done, and I still have a new dual start motor that I bought, what was it, last spring or last winter. I bought an extra one. I was a little bit concerned about supply chain issues if I ever needed an extra motor. I knew I would down the road. So anyway, I bought this one with the anticipation of putting it on at some point. Now here's kind of my logic right now. I bought this motor as a backup motor. I was going to use it, down the road if I got to a point where I was having problems. With the new Parajet Zenith, that's a new motor. I'll be putting plenty of hours on that, between that and the electric and the trike. So why am I going to throw it on the Maverick? Well, I've really been enjoying flying the new equipment, but it's fun to take this little guy out. And after removing the reserve, after removing my toolkit, some accessories, the attachments I had on it, this thing is light. It's very light now. It's back to the original weight. And it's kind of fun to throw it on your back and just go buzz around a little bit. So what I'm thinking down the road here is that if I put this motor on, this backup motor I have, and I fly this for the next year, probably 14, 15 months, by that time, the hope is the new Moster 185 EFI fuel injected will be released to the public. Now, from what I've read, it is out there for dealers to try out, but they want to have about a year for testing to make sure it's running well. From what I've read on it and what I've seen, it's going to be a pretty amazing engine to have. So I'm really looking forward to that. So there's really no need to hold on to this old motor. If I've got one that's got close to 100 hours on it, it's time to upgrade, throw a new one on there. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to swap that out. I'm going to show you how simple this process actually is. Now, if you do not have a dual start, this process is even easier. Basically, at this point, to start out, all we have to do is release a couple of these straps here. This is going to drop our harness down, and then we'll have access to the bolts behind it. Now, basically, we've got those 4 bolts to take off. That will release the motor from the frame itself. There's a couple things we need to disconnect, though, in the meantime. We've got a fuel line. I've got 2 electrical lines that plug into the starter, a positive and a negative. We've got a strap for the airbox, and then if you have an hour meter that's wrapped around your spark plug, we've got to pull that off as well. Okay, so the most complicated part of this process is just managing the motor when it's disconnected and then trying to get a new one on there. If you've got somebody to help you out with this job, it's going to be simple. Now, the fuel line can sometimes be a little bit of a pain to get off. So basically, you just got to crank on this thing as hard as you can, and it will pop off. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is the throttle itself. We do have to pull that cable off. We've also got the wire for the distributor. Now, I was just looking at this, and I didn't notice this last time, but an easier method to remove instead of having to remove the entire throttle cable, is just to take off the bracket right here. There's 2 Allen bolts, and then swap that out with the new one. That way you don't have to thread it through. The end of my cable is a little bit frayed here after swapping this out a few times. Okay, so I double checked. Everything's disconnected outside of those 4 bolts. So now I can loosen those bolts and let's pull this motor off. So I've got two of the bolts out. I've got two to go. I'm going to move this motor to the ground just in case the motor was to drop or tip over, less likely to cause any damage. Okay, last thing I forgot was the pull start connection, so just take that off. Then we have a free and clear motor. This is what your motor looks like when it's no longer connected. Pretty simple. Now, as I said, putting this on with help makes the job 10 times easier. I don't have anyone to help me out, so you're going to see what it's like. You're going to see how challenging it is to get this lined up and bolted in. Okay, you can see that's a little bit of a pain in the ass. Once you get one or two bolts started, then it goes pretty smooth, but it's lining it all up and dealing with the heavy motor. As you can see, I put a strap on the top to help support some of the weight, so that did help a little bit. Okay, the hard part is done of getting the new motor on. Now it's just connecting everything back up again, basically putting it back together the way that we took it off last time. So to reinstall this throttle cable, what you want to do is twist it the opposite way. So basically counterclockwise twist, because we're going to do a clockwise screw in. And that'll keep your throttle cable from getting all bunched up. Now, of course, when you install a new cable, it's not a big deal because you can just adjust it on the other end, but this one's already in place. So we got the throttle cable through. Now we just need to tighten down the other end, basically securing this in place. Now we need to figure out our wiring. Now, like I said, if you don't have a dual start, you really don't have to worry too much about this. I run this wire through some fuel line, basically to protect it from the pull start rubbing up against it. And basically we've got two wires, one that goes to the positive, and then we have a negative, the negative side. Okay, we're going to test this out just to make sure our... Good. Okay, we got a new spark plug. We'll put that in. So basically at this point we've just got some cable cleanup to do. I like to make sure everything's neat and tidy. Of course, we don't want things rubbing against other things, so we're going to do that here. So this fuel line, basically you just slice a line down one side with a razor blade, and that allows you to fish this wire right in there. Doing this kind of cleanup and organization now will save you a lot of hassle down the road. Okay, fuel line is hooked up. Wiring is hooked up. Let's get our pull start cable in. So this isn't the best design by Parajet. You actually have to untie the throttle cable to reroute it through the pulley system. So obviously we need to set it to the right length anyway, but it would be nice if you could just find a way to slip it in there, especially the fact that I don't really use the pull start, but that's the way it works, I guess. We just slip that through there and then screw a bolt. And make sure you come back and snug this up later with a wrench. So basically she's ready to go. Now we just got to tie it up to where it retracts back far enough in. Now we're just going to tie a nice big knot in here, and that will just keep it from pulling back through. Now you might need to come back and adjust this later, so it's not a huge deal. You're just going to come back and redo your knot. But my advice is to tie this super good, you know, a couple knots in there to make it nice and big. I have pulled the starter handle off before. So basically you crank too hard and it'll actually pull the handle right off. So the bigger the knot, the odds of that happening are pretty slim. Okay, we are right where we need to be. Basically now we just need to put the airbox back on and put some gas in it, and we should be able to fire it up. Always make sure you're using your tether for your airbox. I haven't had one fall off. My original one did not have a tether on it, never came off. And then they sent out the new ones with the tether. So obviously it's a problem if they're willing to send everybody a new airbox. So okay, it's been a success. This took us about an hour to get this done. And a lot of that is just finagling with the motor, trying to get everything set up where it needs to go. The last thing we need to do is we're going to double check our bolts. We're going to use a little bit of this torque seal just to make sure that we don't have any issues down the road where they're backing out a little bit. Then we're just going to hook our harness back up and we are ready to go. Now, as far as difficulty, I would say this is maybe a 6 or a 7 out of 10 if you're doing it by yourself. If you got somebody to help you put that motor back on, then we're looking at a 4 or a 5. I mean, literally it's 4 bolts. If you've got a pull start only unit, it just makes it that much easier, less wiring to deal with. So take some time to think about it. If you're at the point where you've got 150 hours or you're just having problems with your motor, it's time to upgrade. Instead of looking at a brand new machine, you can easily do this for half the price. I think a new motor is somewhere around $3,300 to $3,800, and you've basically got a brand new system. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I'm going to get this motor broken in and probably go for a flight with it tonight. Now, one thing I love about my Maverick is that I bought the stand that connects it to the back of the truck. So I'm in the break-in process right now. I have it connected up to the stand, so I don't have to hold the thing on my back and rev it up. Plus, with the off-grid throttle, all you have to do is set it at the RPMs you need it to be, let it run through. I can do other things while I'm waiting for that to get done. A much simpler process.